Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. This morning, we're taking a look back on the history of Milwaukee County. Recently, the tragic death of George Marshall Clark, Milwaukee's only black lynching victim, made headlines when a gravestone was placed on his unmarked grave 160 years later. During this half hour, we'll talk to several people who are responsible for bringing his story to the masses and paying tribute to his memory. My first guest is an archivist at the Milwaukee County Historical Society, and he's the author of the book, A Crowded Hour, Milwaukee During the Great War, 1917 to 1918. I'm happy to be joined by Dr. Kevin Abing. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Andrea.
I'm very happy to have you join us today. And first and foremost, I'd like to start our conversation on finding out more about the Milwaukee County Historical Society.
Well, we've been around since 1935. Initially, we were housed in the seventh floor of the Milwaukee County Courthouse, but ran out of space there, I guess, pretty quickly after moving in. So we moved into this building on the corner of 3rd and Kilbourne, the former Second Ward Savings Bank. We moved in here in 1965 and have been here ever since. And the research library, which is the area that I work, we have hundreds of thousands actually of various manuscript collections, ranging from Milwaukee County department records to collections of letters and diaries, that kind of thing, from various individuals, and records pertaining to various Milwaukee businesses and organizations, that kind of thing. We also have a photo collection that it's pretty sizable. I mean, easily it has over 1 million photos.
Wow.
So if you're looking for an image that deals with Milwaukee County, odds are we probably have something here.
Something, right? And it makes very much a lot of sense that education is the core of the Milwaukee County Historical Society's mission. So your educational services include programs that directly serve students, educators, also special interest groups, and lifelong learners. So really something there for anyone who's interested in walking away knowing something that they didn't know when they arrived, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So several years ago, you wrote an article about the lynching of George Marshall Clark, and that was right around the time the 1967 open housing marches were being commemorated. So if you would talk a little bit about that article that you wrote and what inspired you to hone in on the story of George Marshall Clark.
Well, actually, I came across this collection quite a few years ago when I was the assistant archivist in the library. And it was a collection related to James Shelton, who was one of the people involved in this incident that led to Clark's lynching. And, I was looking through these records, or trial transcripts and things of that sort. And I was amazed. I was shocked that, I had never really heard anything about this incident at all. And, I thought this would be a very interesting and a very important story to tell. I was encouraging other researchers who came in to put something together to write about this. Of course, nothing happened. So a few years ago, I decided, kind of linking it with the anniversary of the open housing marches, I thought it was kind of timely to put those two things together, because you had more recent obstacles that African Americans had to deal with in Milwaukee versus something that happened during Milwaukee's very earliest days. Yeah. And so I just thought it was a very important story to tell.
Yeah, and I agree. It's a very important story, and one that probably had been long forgotten about. So I think it's so important when individuals like yourself see the importance and bring it to light for new generations to kind of be able to not only reflect, but in this instance, it really motivated some people to really change the ending to that story. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that. But if you could help us better understand what happened on that day back September 6th, 1861, that led to Mr. Clark's death, that really had a chilling effect on Milwaukee's Black community.
Yes, it did. Clark and James Shelton, who was an acquaintance at the very least, but more than likely was a friend of Clark's, they happened to be walking along Milwaukee Street on that evening of September 6th, and they passed a couple of guys, one Darby Carney, who owned a saloon in the Third Ward, a very popular saloon with the Irish who populated most of the Third Ward. There were some words that were exchanged between Shelton and Clark and Darby and his friend. And there's different versions as to what sparked the fight, because a fight broke out between the four of them. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is that during the fight, Shelton pulled a knife and he, slashed at Carney and cut him across his abdomen, and then was able to manage to stab Carney's friend in the shoulder. And then Clark and Shelton, made their escape. And Carney eventually ends up dying from his wounds the next day or the next evening. Mm-hmm. And as he was laying in his bed dying, a bunch of friends of his were gathering outside his house, and they made the decision that if Carney died from these wounds, they were going to go to the county jail, because by this time, Clark and Shelton had both been arrested and taken to the county jail. So this group decided if Carney died, that they would march to the jail and take them out, and with the purpose of, I'm guessing, of lynching the two. And Carney did indeed pass away that evening of September 7th. And so this crowd starts making its way to the county jail, and the police chief, William Beck, saw this crowd coming, and he knew what their intent was. So he had his assistant jailer put Clark and Shelton in this back room, and then Beck went out to confront the crowd, and essentially, he's telling the crowd, we've got him arrested, let the law take its course. And the crowd wasn't going to have any of that. I mean, somebody pushed Beck to off to the side, and they rushed into the jail. And one of this mob actually pointed a pistol at the assistant jailer through the door that led to the back cells in this back room, demanding that they turn over the keys and open the door. Well, this jailer refused. And so the crowd, they found a big piece of timber laying around outside, I guess, and they hammered in this door and went rushing into this back part of the jail. And Shelton and Clark, I mean, they could both hear what was happening, and they knew they were in trouble. Well, Shelton was able to make his way into a cell that was adjoining this back room, and he shut the door, and poor Clark is left in this room on his own. The crowd, I mean, he didn't have enough time, I guess, to find his own hiding spot. And this crowd rushes in, they grab Clark, they beat him bloody and senseless, and they dragged him out of the jail. And in the meantime, this crowd, while they're focusing their attention on Clark, Shelton makes his escape. And the crowd, they drag Clark out of the jail and down the street, and they're not really sure if they have the right guy. Some of the people in the crowd, they could care less. They say, let's hang him anyway. But then there are others saying, we really should make sure who it is that we've got before we do anything. So that, they dragged him down to around a street light, and tried to identify him. But his Clark's face was just so swollen and bloody that they couldn't. And so they're questioning Clark, and he's denying that he's the guy. He told him that he was in jail for stealing, and he had nothing to do with this killing of Carney. And so the crowd, they're still not quite sure what to do with him. So they take him to a fire engine house on the lower east or lower third ward, and they had what they would call a mock trial, quote unquote. And again, Clark denies he's the guy. I mean, he says he was in jail for pickpocketing, from some guy. But then at about that time, somebody burst into this fire engine house and says he's the guy. And so they dragged Clark out of the engine house. They had a rope around his neck and through his mouth, and they're dragging him along the street, and people are kicking him and hitting him, beating him with a club all along the way. And there was a pile driver on Buffalo Street, between Broadway and Water Street. Some construction work was going there, and so there's this pile driver there. They take Clark there. They throw this rope up over a beam, and proceeded to lynch him. And he struggled for about 20 minutes before he perished. And that was the unfortunate end for Clark. It was a tragic case. I mean, obviously race played a big part in this, but it was just as much he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he didn't deserve what happened to him.
It's all such a sad story, and really, when we look back on history across America, that has happened more times than we can count. So it was on October 7th of 1861 that James Shelton, who actually was the person who caused the death of the other man, he was found not guilty, and it was found that he acted in self-defense, and that verdict, as we can all imagine, wasn't well received, but he was smuggled out of the city to Watertown, where he boarded a train for Chicago. So it is a very interesting story, and you had Mr. George Marshall Clark, who was buried at an unmarked grave at Forest Home Cemetery, which we fast forward to 160 years. On September 8th, there was a gravestone that was put there, and it really was very moving for a lot of people, because they felt like no one should be in a grave where no one knows who you are, what your story was, or how you got there. So is the Milwaukee County Historical Society actually working on putting a marker there at the Forest Home Cemetery as well?
Well, actually, we are in the process of a marker, but it's going to be placed near the location of where the lynching actually took place. And it's in the process of being created or fabricated, and hopefully in the very near future that marker will be put in place.
Yes. So when you look back a couple of years in writing this story, and then looking at what just took place with seeing the gravestone put there, what are your thoughts and feelings?
Well, when I wrote the article, I mean, I felt it was an important story to tell, but boy, I mean, I really had no idea that it would gain, the traction that it did, or generate the momentum that it did, resulting in this marker being placed at Clark's grave. And for myself, I'm very proud that it that was the end result of this whole process, I guess, because it's just a very fitting way to commemorate Clark's memory. I mean, it's a physical a physical reminder that, I mean, he was a human
Right.
being. You know, he was just trying to make his way in Milwaukee as best he could, and he just suffered this horrible fate that, again, he did not deserve. And I think it's very important that that marker is there to remind people that of what happened, and hopefully people won't ever forget what happened, and that God willing, it'll never happen again.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on and helping us all better understand what happened on that tragic day, and really just being that person to inspire so much to happen after writing that article. Thank you so much again for your time and all that you do.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm very glad that you were able to have me on.
Absolutely. Dr. Kevin Abing is the head archivist at the Milwaukee County Historical Society. It's located at 910 Old World 3rd Street, and for more information, you can visit their website at milwaukeehistory.net or give them a call at 414-273-8288. When we return to Our Issues Milwaukee, we'll continue our conversation about the story of Milwaukee's only victim of a lynching, George Marshall Clark, and we'll do that right after this.